we record these hangouts. I will edit it for the ums, ahs, some of that stuff. It won't be all edited out, but I would definitely try to make it easier for general audience to who isn't like a bunch of crypto nerds who would like to listen to the raw content. So you can share it, and so the Dash people can share it and all that stuff.
Sure,
But what
great,
I'd
great.
like, go ahead.
No, no, that's great. That's great. I just saw the big red button, so I decided to, to press it and record it myself. Well, I am an audio engineer, so it's a bit of a habit, I guess.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we like Mumble is because it gives everybody a press pass, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool.
Yeah, so the way that we do this is the community is here. They will obviously be wanting to ask questions about, various aspects of Dash, different things. Like we might go into philosophical discussions, whatever. But what I would like to start out with is just a few things to get us familiar with you yourself, uh, some of the history of what got you into Bitcoin, and then what got you into Dash, and where, a little bit of that history and where you are today.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I had heard of Bitcoin around 2011, 2012, but I didn't really take much notice of it. I didn't look into it much. And then it was late 2013, just before the big bubble. I discovered Bitcoin and I decided to buy some, which I did, and I got a nice instant profit right until January. Well, when I did the big mistake to start mining and buy a miner. But it was a fantastic learning experience. My background has absolutely nothing to do with finances. It has absolutely nothing to do with coding. Like I said, I'm an audio engineer and I have a master's in neurosciences, so nothing to do with the space in itself. But at a philosophical point, I really got into Bitcoin because it solved some of my inner troubles regarding the financial situation of the world and how the capitalist um, nuance of every aspect of life is destroying our personal liberties, and how 1984 and all that is coming upon us. So that was the my big maining call.
1984, you said, is oddly true. It's very similar.
Yes, absolutely. It's scary. It's absolutely scary. And there's I don't know where this comes from exactly. I know this since I was a little child, but it's a parable of the toad that gets boiled in very slow hot water, and it's so slow. The temperature starts rising so slowly that his pain receptors do not pick up the difference in temperature rise. So in the end, he ends up boiling, getting cooked, and he doesn't even notice because the change is so slow and so gradual that he ends up dying. So that's what I see nowadays in society. I mean, they give us loads of liberties, open quote, end quote, but in the meantime, they just start stealing from other sides of your life, well, sorry, my phone's off. And well, I've always been very extremely sensitive to this situation. So when I found Bitcoin, I thought this was something that I really should be fighting for.
And where do you live? Are we allowed to know, or
Yeah,
just
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
curious?
No, no, I'm perfectly doxed. I live in Portugal. I'm Portuguese. Um, so Southern Europe, right next to Spain. For those of you who don't know, yeah, that's it. That's where I'm from.
You
And
speak excellent English, I'll give you that.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, I lived in Australia when I was very small, when I was really young, so I picked up the language there. But it's starting to, as the years go by, my English starts to fail me.
so to me, it sounds like you got into Bitcoin. You're living in Portugal. Does where you live and how your government and how your government works, and the banking infrastructure, did
Yeah.
that kind of push you in that direction?
Well, yeah, in context, right? So Portugal is located in the South Europe. So we are part of the European Union. We have the euro, but we are, I don't know, maybe the second or third most poor country of Europe. So we are in a very, very bad economic situation for a long time now. Minimum wage here is just around 500 euros. I pay rent for 410 euros, just to give you just a perspective of how things are. I mean, it might sound cheap for many people out there, but minimum wage really is the metric of all this. And yeah, we've been having a really, really tough time where taxation has gone through the roof in every single sector. Banks are failing left and right. Politicians, they just promise and just keep failing. And the Euro project is basically on the verge of collapse. And obviously, the smaller countries are the ones that get affected first. And that's what we've been dealing with for a long time now. Regarding Bitcoin, there isn't any legislation right now. We just comply to general European Union directives. And right now, anything that falls within KYC and AML practices is not frowned upon. So yeah, it's a pretty liberal country, a Republican country. But yeah, we don't have a lot of weight to pull around in terms of market and investments.
The reason I kind of was because you, you at some point in time found it necessary, and everybody who's listening, I'm sure, can kind of agree that you seem like you are very in tune with what's going on in the world in our present situation, right? And at what point did you decide that Dark Coin or Dash, because at one point in time it was called Dark Coin, right?
Yeah, and
Were
even
you
before
there
that,
for the Dark Coin phase?
yeah, absolutely. I was almost at the very beginning. I mean, I really wished I was at the very beginning. And I were a big bag holder right now, but I got into Darkcoin basically because of Andreas Antonopoulos. All right, and let me just put this into context, right? So when right after December 2013, when I got a nice profit from the huge price spike out of Bitcoin, and I started looking into mining. I stumbled upon a Andreas Antonopoulos YouTube at the Jefferson Members Club dinner or something, and I had no idea who he was, whatever, and I just listened through, and his words just resonated with me. I mean, obviously everyone knows AA, how eloquent he is, how well spoken he is, how intelligent, and how he captures the attention of his audience. But I was completely mesmerized by his speech because in an hour and a half, he just put everything that I felt an angst towards, and he condensed it into that. So, and at the same time, Andreas, he has a very clear. He looks at the forest and not particularly at the trees. So he has made very many predictions about the future of this technology and what might happen and what the dangers are. And it just resonated so much with me that when I found Darkcoin, I was able to immediately assess the potential that this coin would have in the future. Okay, and the main thing for me was that it was trying to fix one of the most fundamental flaws, let's call it. It's not exactly a flaw, but it's a problem with Bitcoin, which is the fungibility and the anonymity part of it. So because Darkcoin was trying to address that issue, it caught my attention. Over to you.
Well, I can certainly say after hearing some of the things that Antonopoulos talks about, it's um those things are refreshing because there is a dark side to this technology, right? And we don't always talk about it in terms of the potential dark aspects of how this can be used, but every tool, whether it's a technology or that that's existed for thousands of years, or a new technology can be used for productive or destructive means, right?
What, what
Absolutely,
was
yes, absolutely.
what was the aspect of governance that factored into your adoption of Dash?
Well, absolutely none, because the governance system that Dash has right now is only about, I'm not exactly sure, but it's not even a year old, I would say. Actually, a couple of months, 6 months. Well, I'm not exactly sure. I'm very bad with with these chronological estimates. But at the time, the Darkcoin had nothing of these new features that we now have. So it was only a privacy-centric coin, and that's exactly why it was called Darkcoin. I mean, it had nothing to do with dark markets or dark net or whatever. It was dark because it was the transactions could be, well, not the transactions that could be hidden, but you could have your financial life private, and that's why
Okay.
Evan chose the
I,
name Dark.
I understand. So right now, though, it has changed a lot as you're describing here. Is
Absolutely, yeah.
governance an important aspect to the evolution of Dash, and you're sticking with it, and your perspective of the future of Dash?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. It's one of those things when you look into someone who's developing a project and you're recognizing that person, that this guy has a vision, okay, and he works day in, day out to fulfill his vision, then yes, absolutely, you will be able to recognize that you've got something special, and that's exactly what happened with Dash. So at the beginning, it was Xcoin. It was a project, a hobby project by Evan Duffield, the lead developer, and he just came out and said, "Okay, I'm going to dedicate 2 years of my life to this. I'm going to quit my job and do this full time." And then he changed the name from Xcoin to Darkcoin and decided to attack one of the main problems with Bitcoin. Um, as time went on, we had, as any project, we had problems and difficulties, and with each difficulty and each problem, new solutions arose from them. So he just kept innovating, and new problems came forth, and he just started solving them. That led into a spiral of development that brought to the table, okay, what are the specific problems that cryptocurrencies are having nowadays? Okay, let's look at the big one, Bitcoin. Okay, so they have a foundation and that went bust. They have no governance model and it's going bust. So he started thinking of that, and then later on, after the privacy aspect of the technology was basically laid out to to offer it to other developers to keep on creating, evolving and updating the code, then he just started tackling other aspects, and the governance came along, and we're at the beginning of it, and it's working magically well.
Yeah, Bit Dash and BitShares are the only two coins that offer the type of governance model that are for the shareholders of that coin, and it's really great to see what Dash is doing. And I was extremely impressed with what was what was on the Daily Decrypt not too long ago, where they read the entire white paper of what you plan for the future. So I'm going to shut up now and let you continue. But I really applaud what you're doing with Dash.
Well, thank you very much, thank you very much, and the same with BitShares. I have to be honest, because I'm not a coder, because I do not come from a financial background. Some of the stuff is a bit too much for me. I really do not I do not understand it fully, which I think this is why exactly this meeting between our two communities is so great, because we can just ask silly questions, tough questions to each other without any problems. So I hope to also pick your brain about a couple of things surrounding BitShares.
Certainly.
All right. So yeah, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, please go ahead.
Okay. So where to start? Okay. So essentially, Dash right now is a two-tier network. Okay. So we have the first tier, which is the regular mining of the block, the transaction validation from the miners. And then we have a second tier network called the masternode network. Okay, and what is a masternode? A masternode is a dedicated server that runs anywhere in the world, that serves a purpose to the network. It actually has a function. So while in Bitcoin, any full node holds the blockchain, and it is not incentivized, it's up to the altruistic offering of that node operator to keep it online 24/7 with good bandwidth and good connectivity. So Evan, he devised the second tier network to have a dedicated group of servers that would function 24/7 on specific hardware to keep these services functioning quickly and swiftly. So masternodes, they offer the service of mixing the coins so you can keep them anonymous, and it also offers the possibility to make instant transactions. That's another very important feature with Dash. We are able to send transactions to each other and confirm them within seconds, and this is double proof transactions. So up to here, is everyone following?
Yes.
Any questions so far?
Well, Ken Code had some questions regarding the instant transactions earlier. So I guess one thing that I would ask would be to piggyback on that and just kind of say, what are we talking in terms of seconds? It might be splitting hairs, but I'm kind of curious as far as the actual detail.
Well, yeah, absolutely. 3-4 seconds, and that is it. So what happens is, so right now we have around 3,600 nodes. Okay, so these are again dedicated full nodes. And when you want to send an instant transaction, a couple of these nodes are chosen randomly. Okay, so they look into this transaction and they validate it, and they lock it. They sign for it. They lock it. So if you try to use these coins again, the network will see that no, you can't use these coins because they have been used already for a transaction. And then they hand it over to the miners, and the miners will validate it and then introduce it into a block. So the block time with Dash is around 2.5 minutes. So the miners still are securing the network. Okay, they are performing the really tough cryptographic part of securing the network, but the masternodes are able to lock these transactions beforehand, and that's how we achieve transactions in the 3-4 second range.
Now, the interesting thing that I wonder about is, and one of the things that has concerned me about Bitcoin, and I can pretty much say that I would assume that most people who are here, including yourself, would probably have some level of agreement with what I'm about to say. But whenever you look at mining concentration into mining pools, are there mining pools that Dash has? And well, I guess let's start with that part.
Yeah, definitely. I forget the name right now. I could Google it, but well, anyone could do that. We do have a similar problem as Coin, in that X11, which is our mine algorithm, is becoming ever more centralized in the hands of mining pools. On the other hand, we have received a couple of companies who are coming out with the first X11 ASICs, so that might level the playing field for some time. But yes, we do have that problem. I so wish that people would use pool to pool more. It's just so much more elegant, so much more philosophically in tune with the whole cryptocurrency ideal. I mean, Satoshi himself, he wouldn't want this to happen, but yeah, it's something we're facing. It has been problematic. We have been close to the 50%, 51% horror story or a nightmare number figure, but nothing nefarious has happened so far. And as we all know, it's a more of a theoretical concept than an actual practical one. I mean, if you could control 51% of the network, you'd be able to perform a double spend once, at the best twice, and then the rest of the network would pick up on that and they would just kick you out. So, but yeah, in any case, centralization.
Sounds like a good, somewhat answer.
Yeah, but in any case, that is exactly what Dash is fighting for. Okay, so every single aspect of our project revolves around privacy, freedom, and decentralization. So masternodes are decentralized, InstantX is decentralized, our anonymity features, which involves mixing, is decentralized. And the future of Dash, which we codename Dash Evolution, will also be decentralized.
How I got a question, excuse me, about the master nodes. How are they compensated at all? Is there a incentive for running one? And how does the possibility of collusion and things like that play into that system?
Right. So what happens is anyone who has the Qt, right? So the generic software wallet is a full node. So you download the blockchain and you are a full node, but you're not incentivized. So to run a master node, which is a full node with extra features, what you have to have is 1000 Dash that you lock away in cold storage, and that is used as collateral to activate a master node. So a master node is, at this moment in time, a very low-end server that basically exists anywhere in the world. And with your 1000 Dash that you keep in your laptop, at home, wherever, offline, well, you use those 1000 Dash to sign a transaction, and basically you send a handshake to the server, and that will ping the network saying, hey, I'm a collateralized server running the blockchain. So from then on, you do get rewards for running that master node. Okay, so how does it work? Let me just finish. This is important. Okay, so typically with any cryptocurrency, miners get 100% of the rewards when they mine blocks. With Dash, they get 45%. Miners get 45% of the block reward. The masternode network gets another 45% of those mining rewards, and then 10% is left for the governance system. So go ahead, yeah.
I just want to make sure I had the fact right. There are more than 3,500 or 3,000 masternodes or nodes.
Masternodes. That is not counting. Yeah, that is not counting your regular Qt full node running the blockchain.
And that's a huge thing, because the masternodes are the ones that have the quorums that form in order to provide a lot of the latest enhanced features of the second tier of the network. So that's a huge amount of decentralization right there.
Exactly. That's the thing, and that's why it's so important to have these guys collateralized. Because right now we are Babycoin that offer just privacy and just instant transactions. But what about the future? I mean, right now, even being low-end servers, they are connected 24/7 with dedicated bandwidth and a heaps load of hard disk space to keep the blockchain. In the future, we will have many more services that potentially could run on these masternodes that would require a much higher server spec to offer who knows what. So yeah, it's a really neat feature that we have.
And you can scale. Sorry, Crypto. Yes, one last thing. You scale that up just like we can scale up our witnesses. That's the main point. So go ahead, Crypto.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm just and I'm asking these questions out of ignorance. I haven't read anything about this or anything, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is the economics of this ability. I know that Dan Larimer, Bytemaster, talks a lot about the idea of there being a sweet spot when it comes to decentralization. If you have, for example, like you said, 3,000 or so master nodes right now, they're all running these things, albeit on a low-end server or whatever. Is the reward that they're getting from that, what did you say it is, 40 or 45% of the block rewards, is that offsetting their costs currently? And at what point does that sort of even out? At what point are they incentivized, to actually run them beyond just a, sort of the future potential?
Well, yeah. How to answer that? Well, right now, if you have a masternode, you get a yearly around 12% reward from those 1,000 dash. You get 120 dash back throughout the year. So that is a 12% profit from I forget the word. Sorry.
Interest?
Yeah, interest. Thank you. Dividend interest. Thank you. So that in itself is quite interesting. Obviously, price appreciation when you change those dashes into Bitcoin or into fiat is the most relevant part, because right now we are around $5. Let's say, I haven't checked, but in the future, who knows? So as our feature set evolves and as we have more interactivity with a broader mainstream audience, obviously we believe that price appreciation will increase, and that these rewards will be more than enough to cater for superior server hardware. I don't know if that answers your question, or if that was what you're looking for.
Yeah, it does. I also find that interesting. And I think what's going through my mind right now is, there's been a lot of sort of push and pull internally in the BitShares community about, there's a lot of people that have this sort of trepidation, and for all issues regarding what could be perceived as dilution. And what I see more and more as I hear about things like what you just talked about is so many other cryptocurrencies are experimenting with similar models, and they don't seem to be adversely affecting your market cap right now. The argument is always, well, if you're all these new coins and you're handing them over to those 3,000 master node servers, and they're just going to be dumping them onto the market, and it's going to create downward pressure. And I'm sure that happens to a degree as well, but it seems like it's not as big of an issue. The more I hear about other token experimenting with that, the more I want to shake my fellow BitShares community members and say, hey, look, we can do this. We can pay people, and it's not going to destroy us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yidakee, do you run a masternode yourself?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
There's also another very important aspect about these masternodes, okay, which is the last 10% of the block reward that I did not mention before. So to recap, from the block, the miners get 45%. The masternodes get another 45% of the cut, and then there's 10% that gets allocated for the governance model that Dash proposes. Okay, so how does that work? Anyone, regardless if they are masternode operators or just private investors, doesn't matter. Anyone can propose to the network anything. Okay, and that could be anything from a full project to a specific business development ideas, anything that you can come up with that will help take Dash into the future, or anything that you might find interesting, you can propose to get funds directly from the blockchain. This has a very small cost to prevent spam to the network, and then the masternode operators, through these masternodes, they can vote on these proposals if they wanted to see it through or not. So we have a decentralized governance model that funds development for Dash. Okay, and right up to this point, it has been paying for developer salaries, it has been paying for conferences. We've recently had a couple of community members create a very neat prototype of a vending machine that uses our Instant X technology that we presented at the Bitcoin conference in January, I believe, where you literally scan a QR code, press send, and a soda pop would just boom, instantly come out of the vending machine with absolutely double spend, risk-free. and these are voted by the masternodes. So the incentive of masternode operators is not only to gain dividends for offering this service, but they actually get to vote on the future of development.
Now, is there a similar governance model for actually coming to consensus about whether or not the network, the shareholders of the network, or particularly, let's say, the shareholders with 1,000 or more that are running master nodes, actually want something to be a part of the network when it comes time to, I'm assuming you hard fork, new changes in periodically? Is there a governance model that determines whether or not hard forks should happen and what hard forks should look like?
Good question. Well, we don't have so much as a problem with hard forks, because if you remember before when I said that we had a few problems when Darkcoin set off. One of the problems that we had was when setting up this masternode network, we needed to go through a few hard forks, and that had disastrous effects. I mean, we had loads of sidechains going along, and it took us a couple of hours to reconciliate into a main chain, and that sparked Evan's imagination, and he created a soft spork, which we call a spork. So right now we have a soft fork technology where we can roll out new features in code, let the network slowly update into the 75% zone, 80% zone, whatever, and then just flip a switch and there will be no conflict, or very, very minimal conflict. So we are not scared of hard forks at all. We've had a fair share of them, and we're basically immune to them. But the second part of your question is, yeah, it is these vested masternode operators who vote on the future of development. I mean, even now, when Evan wants to try out a new idea, what he will do, he will propose he will submit a proposal to the network. Hey guys, do you want me to try this and this out? Yes or no? And then the masternode operators will vote yes or no, and depending on the quorum, that will pass or it will not pass.
And as people choose to pay the 1,000 dash to get a masternode, this number of masternodes could continue expanding indefinitely. Is this the case?
Well, until coin supply does not permit it. But let me just point this out. You do not buy anything. You just have 1,000 dash, which is collateral, that you can liquidate at any moment. You can use them at any moment. These 1,000 dash are locked safely in your wallet, and you can do whatever you want with them. The only thing is, to keep your masternode alive, you have to keep exactly 1,000 dash locked away.
So the 1,000 dash collateral, when you spend it or go below the 1,000 dash, then it automatically in code disables you from being a masternode and can be a participant in any quorum that the masternodes participate.
Absolutely, that's exactly it.
That's a good. I mean, I just love the model that you guys have implemented in that second tier, because you're insulating a lot of the problems in Bitcoin into this second tier and providing a huge amount of value add through it, and a lot of decentralization. I'm just extremely impressed with what I heard the other day on Daily Decrypt.
Well, and it sounds like your model for implementing new forks is kind of similar to what we're doing now as well, which is in our model, we have a proposal that's voted on, but ultimately it's up to the witnesses whether or not to run the new software when the hard fork comes out, right? So in this case, you talked about, once 75% of the network is running it, then the switch is flipped and it becomes the new deal. And we have a kind of a similar thing, because we're interfacing. There's some point in which you need to interface with the outside world, right? It's not automatic. You have to have people that actually, update their software, the new software, and the amount of disruption that you experience, you ultimately don't want the end user having to upgrade their wallet or whatever every time there's a hard fork. And it sounds like you guys have solved that in a similar way, to where there's a minimal disruption to the end user when there's forks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever sent coins down a wrong chain. I have, um, even though I knew at a theoretical level that those coins were safe. I mean, well, that was about 2 years ago. I had the worst time of my life. I sent quite a few coins down a wrong chain during one of these forks that went wrong, and boy, did I get a scare. So I can only imagine people who are not well versed in how crypto currencies work, how that might feel. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm kind of wondering is we try to make it so people can get voted in and out of power essentially. Which is we have essentially kind of a committee that makes similar decisions to what you would see in the masternodes making. So I guess my question is, what happens if they someday collude?
Well, what do you mean by collude? 50-50%?
No, let's say that for the governance of the chain, they are doing things that are considered more beneficial to them than
Right. I
the
think,
rest of the people holding tokens.
yeah, okay.
Or maybe better yet, it would be something unethical, but
What?
makes money for the shareholders.
Um, okay, let me put it this way. The Dash governance model is,
Brief idea of how what Fuzzy's talking about here. Basically, what he's saying is if let's say 100 or 200 masternodes got together and colluded to vote themselves in some benefit, that's kind of a conflict of interest and an ethical issue.
yeah, absolutely.
How to get prevented.
Yeah, absolutely. We've thought of that. We've talked a lot about that, and it absolutely is a possibility, like in many walk of life. But because you do have to have 1,000 Dash to be able to vote through one masternode, okay, that means that you have to have a substantial number of masternodes to be able to subvert the system and gain profit from it. Or collude, like you guys said, into a team of guys who will gain majority of it. But because you have to have 1,000 Dash in collateral to be able to vote, it's against your own interest to subvert the system, because then you're going to collapse the system and your holdings will drop in value. Everyone's going to notice, and the price is going to plummet. Okay,
So can I ask you a question? And I'm not trying to be harsh here.
no, tough questions, please. Yeah.
Somebody like I think of George Soros, for instance. He puts in millions and millions and millions into these color revolutions and all these things that um, they're losing him money, but they're making him money in another sector of an economy that's where he's, potentially going to make a lot more money. So if for some reason something like Dash, where an anonymity and privacy is very a big deal, eh, there might be actors who do want to do this, right? Even if they lose money for it.
Well, quite honestly, I don't see how. Let me just say that right now, if you want to buy a couple of masternodes on the spot, you are going to drive the price insanely high, because there is not much liquidity in the market to grab 1,000 after 1,000 after 1,000 Dash to set up these masternodes.
Yeah, Bitcoin would have been taken over the same way, Fuzzy. I think I recognize your argument as an extremely, extremely rare edge case that almost doesn't have a practical way to implement because of the low liquidity in most of these cryptocurrency markets.
Yeah.
Anyone, whether they had $10 billion or whatever, like George Soros in your example, are gonna, if they tried to do that, they're gonna end up with a whole bunch of tokens paying 100 times what their market value is, and the market's going to rebalance itself after everybody cashes out. That's like woohoo!
Yeah, exactly, precisely the point.
And then and then it's back down, and it doesn't really matter all day because these things are all open source. And I don't know. I mean, in some catastrophic situation, I mean, I know with BitShares, we are able to sort of take a snapshot and just share drop and launch a new chain. I mean, I know that has other implications and other complications, but ultimately the integrity of the ledger can be maintained because of that
And
sort of public
decentralized
record. And I'm
between
wondering,
chains, yeah.
is that something with all the dark features of Dash, if there was some catastrophic thing that happened with the chain and everything went down, assuming no one's balances were affected, but the network itself was somehow, taken down. Is there a way to relaunch with a snapshot reflecting everyone's balance?
Well, that is a technical question that I'm not really qualified to answer in terms of relaunch because, well, from what we do have GitHub, and we do take daily, hourly snapshots of the blockchain, so anyone can download the Bootstrap. They can download the Bootstrap and save themselves the trouble of having to sync for hours on end the blockchain from scratch, even though our blockchain is incredibly fast to sync. But in any case, yeah, we do take snapshots of the blockchain. But in terms of subverting the network in a really nefarious way, it's the same thing as Bitcoin. I mean, you do need the vast majority of mining power, and you need to be willing to do something with that power, and people will notice very, very quickly that you're doing something funny, and that will send alarms everywhere.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm very interested in this aspect, because quite often we things like I call it like the Facebook effect, right? Where people use something that has a network effect because it gives them a value added, or it makes their life easier, or something like to this effect, right? And if you look at something like Facebook, they might be doing a lot of things that are considered unethical, but for some reason people don't fork Facebook and get a huge network effect. You know what I mean? Like even if they come up with something that's a similar type of system, because they can't fork Facebook. So I ask those questions, I guess, more from that kind of standpoint, that humans tend to generally be like corruptible to a degree, and that we also tend to make mistakes with technology and do the wrong things historically before we do the right things with them. So, I'm kind of interested in where the governance comes in on that level.
Right. Okay.
That I'm just trying to give you a perspective of where I was coming from.
No, but absolutely, and that is actually quite relevant, because if you think about it, Facebook was a huge explosion, right? And it changed our society completely. But I believe that it's going to phase out, not really quickly like MySpace did, but it's going to phase out within a generation gap. And why do I say that? Because studies show that the younger generations do not want to be on Facebook, because they have their uncles, aunts, their family, whatever, and they cannot express themselves, not have enough privacy. So they will have a Facebook because it's the standard social interaction thing, like email, but they will not use it as much. While services like Snapchat are gaining a huge market cap from the younger generations, because they can keep their activities and their opinions and their choices private from the rest of the world.
Out of curiosity, though, do you think that this is true? Because I will say with Snapchat, I'm pretty certain, and I'm pretty sure it's Snapchat, but as soon as these social networks reach like a certain threshold, it seems like, I like to call them the cabal. I'm just going to say it. But there seems to be this overarching body of governance that is trying to utilize all these social media platforms to mine our data and to get information about us against our wills. And it might not necessarily be private, I mean, it might be private, but it might not be anonymous, or they can still gather data on those things, right? And the question, I guess, is even if we move through Facebook, aren't we going to continue having the same struggle as humanity?
Well, I think the problem is much worse than that if you think about it, because Facebook and Snapchat and whatever is a proactive choice by the user to do something. Okay, and even if you're not a lawyer, you just have to be aware of your surroundings, and you will know that whatever you do on Facebook gets recorded. Whatever you do on Snapchat or whatever centralized server has always the potential to be corrupted and to gain access to your information. But the main problem for me is on the Internet of Things in stuff like, for example, the new smart TVs. Many companies are having the hell right now because people are starting to wise up to the fact that even though it's off, the EO feed will be on by choice of the people running the back end, and that can have you can have government just snooping into your life even though your TV is shut off, and that will go for cell phones, that will go for radios, for CD players, for whatever.
You're paying for them to spy on you.
Absolutely. I mean, eventually your fridge will be able to listen into what you're preparing for dinner. So that is
in a lot of ways, you know? And I think if people become more conscious of the betrayal, they will, you know, there will be a market for people seeking alternatives to these types of things, alternative hardware or alternative, you know.
There's a lot of hacking going on just for the very reason to circumvent some of these things that have already infiltrating our society through these backdoor means.
Exactly, and that is the problem. When one thing is Facebook and Snapchat, that you have a choice. Hey, look, this is something I'm going to sign up for and I'm going to use. The other is just to live your life as usual and have people and have these institutions and government just introducing, without you knowing, these systemic plagues and cancers that can potentially just the right to privacy and anonymity.
Well, I don't mean to. I wanted to kind of bring it back to Dash here, because I'm curious about, and again, this is coming from, I haven't looked too much into this. What are the current sort of feature? What's the total feature set that Dash has right now, and then what are some of the future, like going forward in the next couple of years? What are the possibilities that the technology that Dash you know, runs on, the consensus and the actual blockchain? What types of features are possible with that?
Right. So yeah, that's a great question, because that will introduce what we are preparing for the future, the near future. So looking back, we've talked about instant transactions. So Dash is able to do 3-4 second double spend proof transactions. We have a self-funding governance model, okay, which we call the Dash governance by blockchain. We have Dark Send, which we are rebranding to Privacy Protect. So that is the ability to have within your wallet a certain amount of coins that you can keep anonymous, and another set of coins that you can use just like Bitcoin pseudo-anonymously. So you have the choice between complete anonymity and privacy and regular open ledger. We have the second masternode operators, who they are they are rewarded for this service. So you run these software, these servers, and you get rewarded by the blockchain directly. And that is basically it right now. So now we are working on a third tier. Okay, so this masternode network is the second tier, and now we are working on the third tier. So what is the third tier? We call it Dash Evolution, and Evan Duffield showed a prototype at the Miami Bitcoin conference in January. You can go to dash.org and check out the videos. It is very cool. So what did Evan do? He created a third network called Dash Evolution, which is a decentralized API. It works through a decentralized API, and it's basically a wallet that the end user does not need to know about private keys and public keys, and have to go through all the trouble to understand how the cryptographic of cryptocurrencies. So it's basically as easy as signing up for a service like PayPal. So you sign up for that service, and you can use it as to send and receive coins with just a handle, and that is done in a decentralized way. So that is something that we're very excited about, because we believe that will help take this technology to a more mainstream audience.
So is there a possibility of creating more complex, what do I want to say? I guess I'll just say smart contracts, for lack of a better term, built into the Dash blockchain, or will it be primarily a payment service, meaning transferring positions on the ledger, platform?
Well, one thing that we have discussed extensively is what can we do with this technology, and we can do a lot. I mean, the masternode network alone is capable of theoretically doing anything that Storj or MadeSafe can do. We could potentially do stuff like BitShares can do, but do we want to do it? No, not at this point. No, we want to focus on what we are good at. So we want to perfect instant transactions. Privacy Protect in the future will be at a protocol level, so no more need for mixing. We want to perfect the governance model. Within the governance model, we've already found that there is a little problem. Okay, so proposals are a month-by-month basis. So let's say that you propose to the Dash network that you want to create a piece of hardware that will benefit the ecosystem, and you ask blockchain for a 12-month payment of 120 Dash per month, and that gets proposed. Masternodes vote yes, and you start getting funded. 3 months later, new proposals come. Masternode operators, they start voting, and you can vote yes, and then you can downvote to no, and you can vote yes again. So it's a very dynamic system. And 3 months down the line, your proposal can be downvoted to a no status, and you will not be funded anymore. That has caused problems with contractors. So we found out that we want to contract. Yeah, exactly. And we go into agreement. All right, you're going to get paid X amount for Y amount of work, and we will pay you directly from the blockchain this amount of Dash. And then 2 months later, new proposals come along, and that gets downvoted, and then the contractor is at a loss. We lose reputation because we weren't unable to up our word, and that happened once, and we did not like it at all. I mean, the contractor was extremely cool. There was no problem at all, but we did not like to conduct business in that way. If we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. If we're going to say we're going to pay you, we're going to pay you. No questions asked. So,
well,
Evan,
there is in that governance model, there is one thing to keep in mind that we've encountered, and that is that if in our case we call it a worker, but whoever wants to get money from the blockchain to do some particular feature or whatever, if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, we need a way to cut off their funding. So even if you have a contract, you need to have facilities to be able to cut them off if they don't uphold their end of the contract. So there's some reputation and some ongoing double checking and accountability that needs to be incorporated into your governance model, which we have done ourselves.
Absolutely.
We've kind of run through these pitfalls ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is so novel and so new. I mean, we also ran into a problem where price appreciation or depreciation could be a concern, because the contractor may or may not want to keep those the Dash in Dash. They might need to convert some of that those coins into fiat to pay for raw materials or to pay for employees or whatever. So yeah, we've been having very interesting study cases to. I mean, and again, this is all very new. But
Yes,
to get back,
that's a
Yeah.
very important point. And bid assets is one of the ways we've addressed the volatility of the currency. Because if you have a long running contract, yes, if I was somebody that was going to provide a feature or something, I want to do it on a basis that I can pretty much count on. I don't want to have to deal with the fluctuating value of the medium of exchange we're negotiating in. So we've kind of addressed that issue through bid assets, but you have to have liquidity for that to work well.
right, which is exactly why this conversation that we're having now is great, because in the future we could potentially combine. I mean, through Open Ledger, for example, we could work out something that how can Dash solve these problems that it's having using someone else's technology and bring it into onto the table and work with that. I mean, who knows? I'm not technical enough to answer that, but I do see the possibilities there.
Well, we've been talking a lot lately about sidechain technology and how to since we have the ability to elect, meaning stake voting, and it sounds like you guys have something very similar. It's just set up a little bit differently, but that the possibility of electing or using the same elected officials, so to speak, the witnesses in our case, as multi-sig, as a multi-sig authority on an account on another blockchain, perhaps even in a totally different consensus algorithm like Bitcoin or Litecoin or you guys or Ethereum, that we could enable the trading of other tokens, and actually, rather than having them be bid asset derivative assets, I mean, that's still necessary for things like fiat currencies, because obviously we can't trust the central banks, but we can have the trading of actual tokens that are actual representatives of tokens of
your token.
of your token, yeah, and even of tokens on your blockchain. If you have other tokens besides just the basic Dash, if you guys decide to implement some sort of user issued asset tokens or something like that in the future to represent different things, those could then be traded in a completely trustless way, meaning that the accounts that are holding the funds and issuing the corresponding asset, user or the corresponding representative asset on BitShares, the multi-sig authority is for all practical purposes the best way to do it, right, through election. It would then enable you to utilize, if and when we get to the point where we've been able to generate the liquidity in the bid asset markets, and we're able to sort of have a strong pegged currency to the dollar and to other fiat currencies. This is the type of thing we've been discussing right now, figuring out ways to bridge other technologies, other communities, to be able to use BitShares simply as an exchange, not even necessarily competing, because a lot of things
focusing on so many things.
Yeah,
This is actually what we just had the last hangout about.
Yeah, I don't know how long you were in the room. Yidakee, is that how to pronounce it?
Yeah, Yidakee.
Ding ding dings.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, this is sort of, I'm starting to understand and see this, a little bit bigger perspective. We have all of these different communities, and we've got some just really brilliant and amazing and dedicated people.
And the same problems.
Yeah, and coming up against similar problems in a lot of cases, and but we are all sort of focused on different things as well, different niches, and we've got a lot of people that even share similar philosophies and similar sort of visions for the future, or at least desires. We see the problems, we all see the same problems, right? We're all looking at the same problems. We might not all have the same solutions, potential solutions, but but being able to enable that in a way that is, that can link everybody together and not have to go through, separate sort of intermediaries, where in other words, we can focus, each sort of technology, each group can end up focusing on what it is they do best, rather than everybody trying to compete with each other on all fronts, which is kind of what the mad rush for the last couple of years has been. Like, oh man, we got all these new technologies, and it sounds like you guys have really sort of solidified around let's do what we do best, and that's a theme that's coming up here in BitShares, has been in the last couple of months, is, okay, the reality is we could do infinite different things with this, but that's almost a hindrance, because it's like
Yeah,
we need to figure out how to focus on what we do best. And if we're good at that, then we can actually end up supporting and helping out other chains, not just DPost chains.
that will all specialize on their own.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there, that we're sort of in the same boat now, thinking about how to bridge.
Beyond Bitcoin, right?
Right.
Definitely, yeah.
In a good way. Say what, Yidakee?
No, I'm saying definitely. What you totally resonates with my belief of what this technology can achieve in our lives in the future. I mean, obviously, you have guys like Microsoft and whatnot, and all the major banks looking into the blockchain technology and adopting it and bringing in talent to develop for themselves. But that's the beauty of for me, at least, about these open source projects, is it's in the hands of the people, and it's not a type of technology that can be taken away. Like, for example, old telephony or even radio, that anyone can have a radio, but they can hunt you down and they can find you. I mean, with this technology, anyone in the world can just build something and create a following, and the network effect will take care of the rest. And some things are just unstoppable. And history.
And one thing that Bytemaster brought out in the last Mumble session this morning was that they can target individuals, but they can't target all of us. It's just not going to happen in an effective way. They won't be able to succeed at doing that.
Well, and on a long enough timeline, things are going to end up equalizing in various different ways. You have this technology is kind of enabling at a very basic level a sort of meritocratic social order. I mean, or it can enable that. And then the more people that come to it and understand it and begin utilizing it, I mean, we're talking about peer-to-peer, networks of people, not just on a technology level, but on a social level as well. And I think it's going to transform things in ways we haven't even imagined yet. But getting hung up too much on the fact that these, I'm not saying that's what we're doing right now, but just in general, the fact that all of these, quote unquote, huge, massive, multinational sort of overlords, to corporations, big money is trying to get in and compete. I don't see any scenario logically that they will be successful on a long enough timeline, and that timeline, might only be 5, 10, 15 years maybe, where it's going to become more and more apparent. And there's the unrest is already growing here, right? We're seeing it right before our eyes. I live in the United States, so I'm kind of, but I know Europe is going through similar things, and really all the rest of the world now. People are getting fed up and tired, and the younger generations already don't trust the banks. And so this is going to move forward, I think, pretty quickly. It already is, but it's going to keep picking up. And I think, getting back to what I was saying earlier, being able to figure out ways to connect the decentralized chain communities together is important, because that sort of will begin to allow us to sort of present a united front against any anyone who wants to come in and say, I'm the one blockchain to rule them all. Well, if we can link everyone together, and
you remember whenever we were talking about, you got me thinking about it, plasma or something like it, there's nothing saying hours and dash developers to do something like this.
Fuzzy, you were breaking up there.
Yeah, you were breaking up a bit.
Oh, I was just saying there's nothing keeping us as multiple chains who have their own self-governance and can actually pay workers to all contribute to building something like a dream team of developers to develop something like the idea of what Bytemaster calls plasma.
Yeah, if I can just chime in here for a second. What was said just a moment ago, which I was going to refer when I was talking about the Masternode network, is exactly the notion of meritocracy versus democracy. That is very, very important in this time and age, because something that naturally happened within the Dash community was that we discovered that our governance system was not a democracy, and thank goodness it wasn't a democracy. It was a meritocracy. People who are most invested have a bigger vote. People who have more masternodes and more 1000 Dash in collateral, they are most invested in seeing this coin succeed. So they will work harder and evaluate the situations harder and think on how they're going to vote stronger and in a stronger fashion, as opposed to someone who has one masternode and doesn't really just looks through the proposal and just votes. Okay, in the same way that our development team and people are not elected, just except one or two guys who are handpicked by Evan because of their what they could bring to the project. But basically, people start contributing. They start showing what they're able to do from any given field, be it from we have lawyers, we have graphic artists. Me, for example, I have no coding experience, and then you have loads of coders, and people chip in many different areas.
How many coders would you say is on the developments? I know it's a distributed model, so you can't be exact, but approximately how many of the key developers do you see contributing to Dash?
Oh my God, that is such a tough question. Because we have so many layers of develop. We have, okay, so core team, I would say there's about 7, 8 like full-time guys who are really working day in, day out. And then we have other guys who are more volunteer based. They're always committing to GitHub. They're always solving little problems like, oh, we need someone that can do I don't know, a GUI change to the Qt. Oh, talk to this guy does a good job. So we work a bit like that, and when stuff needs to be done, we right now know who we have in our roster to call in. As to how many people are directly funded by the blockchain, that I would not know how to answer.
So you guys have no resource that you're aware of yet.
Oh yeah, sorry, but yeah,
Something that they build.
we work basically. Development is coordinated around Slack, so we use Slack as a central hub to connect. And done. And right now in Slack, there's a daily population about 60-70 people every day doing something. Be it translations, be it a website renovation, be it writing a script for an animation, be it doing the iPhone wallet, be it doing the Electrum fork, working on so many. But I mean, like I said, what I really like about Dash is that we are targeting 2 or 3 very specific areas in which we think we can improve the mainstream use of cryptocurrencies.
How do you decide that? How do you decide what areas you're going to focus on?
Well, we don't. Basically, the community decides what it wants to do, and then people just follow. So we have Evan Duffield, who is the main visionary and coder, and he introduces the big solutions to the big problems, and then people just start chipping in. And then obviously people start asking, oh, but I have an Android phone. Why don't I have a wallet on my Android phone? And then, oh yeah, we need an Android phone wallet. And okay, who do we know that can work on this? And then people just start getting together, and the community starts like flourishing. Really. I mean, I'm sure you guys have the same story.
Well, actually, what's interesting is it sounds to me like there's just a lot of ad hoc synergy, and it just happens in your community, where it does in ours to a certain degree. But I think right now we're at a place where there's a lot of discussion about which is the best thing that we should pursue, but there's not a lot of consensus and people saying, all right, that's obvious, let's go do that right now. So it's difficult in our community at this point in time.
Okay, so structural decisions, like really hardcore. Okay, do we want to go left or do we want to go right in really broad terms of development? Up to now, that has been Evan Duffield's visionary notion of how the future should work. And he's always been, before the governance model, he has always been incredibly altruistic. He has always talked to the community, and he has listened to everyone's opinion. And I don't think there has ever been a situation where he said, no, I want to do it my way. I mean, at some point, I'm not mistaken, he wanted to bring in the developer of Spreadcoin. If I'm not mistaken, it was Spreadcoin, and just bring all the code into Darkcoin. And for some reason, the community freaked out and said, "No, we don't want this. We don't want this." And he just said, "Okay, I'm going to back down. I'm not going to go through with this." When the name change from Darkcoin to Dash, he asked the community, "Do we want to do this? I mean, I think it would be great, but do you guys want to do this?" And the majority said yes, so we went with it. But now that we have the governance model,
how did you decide that the majority was with the new name? I mean, that's a good example of how you establish a decision as to which direction to take.
Right. So at the time, it was absolutely not precise as now with the governance system, that we have very precise numbers. Who voted yes, who voted no, and who didn't vote. Okay. At the time, it was merely through the forums, so through very long thread posts where people just started debating the pros and cons of each situation, and it was just very clear the amount of voices pro and con each situation. So it was basically how should I say?
I understand that. That's a good example, and we have that right now for a lot of the discussions that we have. Like, what's the best way to improve our liquidity, or should we implement side chains, or should we implement XYZ proposal? Well, the proposals are a little different because there is a more formal thing. But some of the guys that make these ideas out in the forum, and they say, well, should we do a worker proposal? Is this merit a worker proposal? So there's lots of discussion around many of the things that we are having now.
Proposals themselves, I would say it sounds like it's more in Dash, and maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like somebody can go into the Dash Slack and say, hey, I would like to make 2 tutorial videos for this, and then basically say I would like 100 Dash or 50 Dash for it, and they say yes or no.
That's not, let me just, no, that is not correct. That is not correct. So how does it work? Okay, so let's say that you yourself, you want to contribute to Dash, but you don't have the funds to do it, and you're going to request the community for some funds. So what you would do is you would fire up your Qt and go to the console and just type a few commands. Now, obviously,
so it's in the client itself.
Yes, it's part of it. Yeah, it's one of the RPC calls. So you can do it through the daemon, through the or through the Qt. So what you would do is
logged in the blockchain.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. This goes into, well, if it goes into the blockchain or into the Masternode network, that's another technical question that I don't want to be a liar about. So I'm not sure if it goes into the blockchain.
The Qt is just a GUI, or basically the wallet GUI that you're talking about.
Yes, precisely. Just like Bitcoin Qt, we have our own Qt. So yeah, what people do right now is they go onto the forum, or they create a website, and they create a pre-proposal discussion. Okay, so why do people do this? Because you have to pay a small fee to present your proposal, and if no one really gets what you're on about, they're not going to vote positively. So people start lobbying for their proposals before submitting, just to sense how the community might feel about this proposal. But in any case, let's say you want to do a video,
so sort of pre-proposal.
Yeah, a pre-proposal discussion. Yeah. So let's say you want to do a video. You can go to the Qt. You type a very simple string, submit proposal, blah, 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 blah. And that gets, and you choose how many payments you want, how much each payment you want for it to be, and when does it start, when does it finish, and all that. And then the Masternode network, or anyone with a Qt, can issue a command to see which proposals are available to vote for. We have a community guy create a very cool website where you can just view these proposals in a very user-friendly way. It's called dashwhale.org. and you can read the proposals and yeah, your discussions and interact with the
And that
community.
is dash whale.
Let me just check.
Just for anybody who's listening after the fact.
Yeah, -whale.org.
Thank you.
We have other resources, but this is the most graphically pleasant and friendly interface that we have right now, and anyone can just check it. So you can do it all from the Qt, but it's much friendlier to look at through -whale.org. So then, so you're not going to ask anyone's permission. You're not going to go into Slack and say, "Oh, Mr. Developers, please, can I have some funding for my cool project?" No. You just literally propose it, and people will evaluate how solid that proposal looks, and they will vote yes or no. And that's why it's so important to talk about meritocracy and versus democracy, because obviously, if you're not known to the community and you come in asking for ridiculous amounts of money for some crazy project, you're just going to be voted no. If you are well known in the community, you're going to be taken much more seriously. If you ask for something that people are not sure of, and you ask for funding for 6 months, and each payment for 100 dash, and after the second month you're not showing any results, well, people are just going to downvote you, and you're not going to get paid anymore. So it's really up to you to do a good job in promoting and have a solid idea, present it properly to the network, to the community, lobby for it, because that's what you should do. Get awareness, raise awareness for it, and keep your fingers crossed that it'll get voted yes.
So what you're saying, Yidakee, fundamentally seems very similar to the process that we would go through. And I think that some people, I want to throw this out there because I think we have a very, very unique challenge here in BitShares that you guys aren't facing necessarily, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. Everything that you're talking about makes very much sense. It's very logical. There's a flow to it. One thing follows another. We have a situation in BitShares, however, where, and this is kind of pulling just off the top of my head, but I think this is probably pretty realistic. Maybe a third, up to a half, and perhaps even more than a half. I know that's a big range, but of the holders of the BTS token, and therefore shareholders in BitShares, are Chinese. And most of them do not speak the language, and I would say that there's probably not two cultures on the planet that can be farther apart in many, many ways, in sort of social protocols and things like that. Now, this is in no way, shape, or form trying to pin anything on Chinese at all. I mean, I think that they are an extremely valuable asset. They've supported BitShares.
But it does interesting element.
But the interference and the inability to communicate is just a huge gulf. And when you have that number of your shareholders that are not able to feel like they are on the same page with everyone all the time, and you have a handful of people who can translate, but then you've got you're subject to their own personal biases, and it's very, very difficult, and it's been very challenging up to this point for BitShares to be able to operate in a way that sounds like, I know it's going through it. I was thinking it might have been going through Tom's and Fuzzy's heads as they were asking their last couple questions, like, man, why does this seem like it's working so well for Dash, and why hasn't it worked for BitShares yet? And
there's a different reason for that. It's not just the Chinese and communication. It's I've mentioned it a couple of times. Actually, why I helped start this Mumble server. There is this definite anti-bazaar model. The model that he's describing it's called the difference between the cathedral and the bazaar development model. In the cathedral, you have these group of priests. They have their ideas and they publish it. And that's kind of like what the BitShares team the development team was trying to do. Get all these guru developers together and they will work it out. And the bazaar thing is where you completely let the market work it out. It's chaotic, but somehow stuff gets done that way.
Well,
Well,
Evan
it seems
Duffield is
like there are
similar to
elements.
our model.
Yeah,
I
the
mean, we
similar.
have Bytemaster that's the equivalent to the Evan Duffield in the Dash world, but I think Joey has a point. There is a
Can I
certain
sneak in here real
attitude
quick?
about that, certainly.
I hate to interrupt, but I really think that it's this has been what I wasn't really thinking so much that it's happening really well in Dash and not happening so well here. I think that we're both in very similar growth phases. So like we're in a place right now where I think we are starting form a consensus around, hey, we've got to stick to one or two things that we do well. We can't get lost in the sea of possibilities yet. But we can work on allying with other people whenever we get to that point. And I think that's a pivotal point, really. And if once we reach that point, we now are in a place where a worker proposal toward that direction feels like it makes sense and it's more worth it. And couple that with the no down voting, and like Crypto was saying, it was a kind of a like a chess move, and it might those little changes in sentiment and in the code might end up making a big difference. You know what I mean? Like that's what we're all tweaking right now.
Yeah, there is a good possibility. I'm really excited about this new hard fork and the possibilities it might bring to, like I said, getting people paid for the work that they're doing ultimately, but even further than that, giving people making people feel like it's a possibility. I think it's been perhaps, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but people haven't pursued this avenue very much because they've seen how it's damn near impossible to get a worker proposal pushed through up to this point. And so I'm hoping that eliminating downvoting, maybe like you said, Fuzzy, a little bit of change in sentiment about rallying around a few key key features that we all can get behind. Hopefully that will push us into a new phase of optimism and willingness to fund growth through a little bit of dilution.
Can I make a
Yeah.
point real quick? Is that okay?
No,
Nope.
Solomon.
No, we can't. There's no points that can be made here, Solomon. I'm sorry. You're gonna have
We
to go to
don't
the
make
other
points.
mumble. This is
Ignore them.
this is the
Ignore them.
bullshitters mumble. This is where we sit around and bullshit.
By the way, Prometheus, you made a very, very, very good point that I think people are maybe sweep under the rug, but it's something that I think the community should really, really, really think about. And it's not the point I'm trying to make here, but I think the notion that culture doesn't matter or shouldn't be thought of as the thing that really disconnects where a technology can go. I think that's very dangerous to just sweep that under the rug. I think it's something that needs a hard look at, and people need to really pay attention when you're making that point. But what I wanted to ask Yidakee is, and I hope I'm saying that right.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so I got it right. Oh, awesome. Thank you for being here. That's first of all, your knowledge and bringing, the whole Dash platform to this community and letting us know how that goes. I really appreciate that. What I wanted to state about Dash, though, because I had been following Darkcoin since the beginning. I did not know that Dash was Darkcoin. And the reason why I bring up that point is because my community here knows that I'm a big filmmaker. I deal with marketing. I deal with visuals and bringing messages that work to technology. And so I wanted to ask you about who decided to reintroduce Darkcoin as Dash, and when that happened.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. Because my thing is, again, I did not know. If you would have never told me that Darkcoin used to be Dash, I would have just thought Dash was a new coin. So I want to know who exactly thought of to reintroduce the platform as Dash? And when you guys did that, what happened to your market cap?
Right. So what happened was the following. Everyone knows the story behind Bitcoin and how one of the major factors for the price increase was the use of Bitcoins in Silk Road type of markets and darknet nefarious activities. And when Evan Duffield rebranded from Xcoin, the hobby, to Darkcoin, the cryptocurrency project that he was going to dedicate his life to, or at least the 2 years from then, it was with the ideal that it was dark as opposed to Litecoin and opposed to Bitcoin, in that it was hidden and private and anonymous. But that backfired a bit. As the community started growing, a couple of really talented business development guys joined. We have in our core team lawyers and entrepreneurs and guys from many different fields, and they started interacting with potential investors, with service providers, even with authorities. And one thing that became excruciatingly obvious was that the name was being a very, very strong hindrance to the development. We wanted to push our morals and our ideals for a better and more free society and empower the end user through privacy, and it started backfiring because people were associating Darkcoin with dark web and dark markets. So yeah, that discussion came about very, very early on by community members, and then that voicing started to grow and up to a point that it was inevitable, and yeah, we decided to change.
It's completely organic.
Oh yeah, everything about Dash is completely organic. That's one of the beauties of our community.
What's interesting is when you made the decision to move away from that dark persona, you didn't divorce your principles. You kept the principles. You just rebranded yourself, and that's, I think, very impressive.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Exactly. That's the point, Yidakee, is that you guys didn't change your principles. All you changed, really, was the branding. You changed the branding, and I'm pretty sure the market cap for Darkcoin, which is now Dash, shot up when you guys rebranded and had a new message and put it out there, correct?
No, actually, no. We didn't. Well, obviously, we do have very, like any cryptocurrency, we do have volatility spikes, and yeah, buy on the rumor, sell on the news. That happens, of course, but we've had many different episodes where it has gone incredibly up and incredibly down for numerous reasons, but we did not feel any substantial market cap increase because of the rebranding.
What was the price of Darkcoin before the rebranding? Because if I remember correctly, you guys were pretty low. If I remember, but I might be wrong. What was the price of Darkcoin?
Oh my God, I can't remember. I really can't remember. It was about a year ago. It was about 3.5, 4. I wouldn't be sure. I wouldn't be sure.
We needed crypto
Ultimately, I think
Wayback Machine.
Yeah, I think the point is that, and this is something that Larimer just brought up in the last hours, that it's ultimately not easy, or I would even say impossible, to tell exactly what move you made did what to the market cap. You especially in these speculative markets, you can't tell whether that was an issue we were having.
Cause and effect is not so obvious.
Yeah, and in marketing especially. I mean, this is an issue that we were having in the early iterations of shares, where we were paying the block producers to also as marketers, and then the issue was coming up. Well, how do we know who's being successful? If this marketing initiative is successful, how do we know it wasn't this other marketing initiative?
Can we even say that the merger was a clear-cut night and day big difference? Because I don't think we can. I mean, it took a long time before the effects of the merger really influenced, and then by then we really couldn't draw a conclusion that was a direct cause and effect for a change in the market.
I would say the reason is because every crypto market simultaneously fell right around the time that we did the merger. So there was if it it wasn't direct result of the merger, there was a definite parallel going on where all other cryptocurrencies at the end of 2014 headed into the great bear market of 2015 with a bang. So yeah, but yeah, you're right, Tom. I mean, I think that there isn't a clear metric, to determine what you did and whether or not that caused the price to go up or down, except for the whole buy the rumor, sell the news thing. Like you said, I mean, that's a pretty clear thing that happens all the time. But where do you end up after people sell the news? Do you end up higher? Do you end up lower? On a long enough timeline,
Well,
it's hard.
real quick, I hate to interrupt this party because this is actually what this is all about. But what I would like to do is I'd like to wrap up the official part of this hangout. Because we are sitting at about an hour and a half, and that means that I'm gonna have about 3.5 hours of editing. Yidakee understands whenever I say that.
Absolutely, yeah.
T-Bone has a question that I'd like you to wrap it up with, Fuzzy. That's pretty good.
Yeah, let's go ahead and ask this. Why did Dash stop trading on Bitfinex? Sorry if that was answered already.
Bitfinex. Well, the official statement was because there wasn't enough trading volume to justify liquidity. One thing that you have to keep in mind is okay, so Dash stands for digital cash, and we are obviously trying to be a payment processor first and foremost. We can evolve into other subsets, but we want to be a payment processor and be really good at it. And due to the Masternode network, where you have to have 1,000 in collateral and you gain dividends from it, that creates a positive feedback loop that the more masternodes that come into the network, the less coins are available in the market. So that's why our price has been, I mean, by comparison, incredibly stable. As opposed to other coins where when Bitcoin shoots up, they go up. When Bitcoin collapses, they all go down. And Dash is able to absorb a bit of that volatility in the price to fiat, exactly because we don't have a lot of liquidity in the markets. Now, that is good, and that it's good and bad at the same time. And Bitfinex, well, they decided to drop us exactly because of that. They just didn't have enough volume.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something that BitShares has discussed, or our community has discussed before, and that you have an actual sort of model that you guys have determined, might be the reason for your stability, that so many people have coins locked up and they're getting incentivized to lock up coins. That might be something to consider, when we have discussions about whether or not that's a feature we want to add to BitShares.
Yeah, we call it proof of service, if anything. I mean, it's not proof of stake by any means, it's proof of service. So you lock away these coins. These coins have a purpose. They activate a masternode that serve the network. So it's proof of service.
That's cool.
Thank you
Well,
so
I'm
much,
going
Yidakee,
to-
for coming. This was a fantastic after party, and we appreciate your participation greatly. Hope for the best for Dash, and that you'll come back and maybe have another one of these with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was an honor to be here. This was my first time doing something like this, so I hope that people enjoyed it. They get more informed. I have no problems with tough questions. I mean, we get trolled pretty heavily with some very strong and horrible accusations. So if you feel in the future you want to do something like this again and just keep nitpicking my brain, I'm all for it.